Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that is dominating headlines and causing ripples across the globe: the escalating tensions between the United States and Iran. This isn't a new story. The relationship between these two nations has been complex and often fraught with conflict for decades. But recent events have brought the situation to a critical point, and understanding the nuances is more important than ever. So, what's happening? Why is it happening now? And what could come next? Let's break it down together. To really get a grip on the current situation, we need to rewind the clock a bit. The story of US-Iran relations is a long and winding road. It starts long before many of us were born, with the 1953 coup, supported by the US and UK, which overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, and reinstalled the Shah. This event planted deep seeds of mistrust. Fast forward to 1979, the Iranian Revolution saw the overthrow of the US-backed Shah and the establishment of the Islamic Republic. The subsequent hostage crisis at the US Embassy in Tehran, where 52 American diplomats and citizens were held for 444 days, severed diplomatic ties completely. This historical baggage is crucial. It's the foundation upon which all subsequent interactions, or lack thereof, have been built. It's a history of grievances on both sides that fuels the modern-day narrative. Now, let's jump to a more recent and pivotal moment: the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. This was a landmark agreement between Iran and several world powers, including the United States. The core idea was simple: Iran would agree to significantly limit its nuclear program and allow for rigorous international inspections. In return, the crippling economic sanctions that had been imposed on it would be lifted. For a while, international inspectors confirmed that Iran was holding up its end of the bargain. The deal was seen by many as a major diplomatic achievement, a way to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon without resorting to military conflict. It wasn't perfect, and it had its critics from the very beginning, but it represented a potential pathway toward more stable relations. However, the political landscape shifted dramatically in 2018 when the United States, under a new administration, made the controversial decision to unilaterally withdraw from the JCPOA. The reasoning given was that the deal was flawed, that it didn't address Iran's ballistic missile program or its influence in the region, and that it only delayed, rather than stopped, Iran's nuclear ambitions. Following the withdrawal, the U.S. reinstated and even intensified its economic sanctions, launching a maximum pressure campaign. The goal was to cripple Iran's economy and force it back to the negotiating table for a better deal. This move was not supported by the other signatories of the deal: the UK, France, Germany, China, and Russia, who all tried to keep the agreement alive. But without the US, the deal's future became incredibly fragile. The maximum pressure campaign has had a devastating effect on the Iranian economy. The sanctions have targeted key sectors like oil, shipping, and finance, effectively cutting Iran off from the global financial system. The value of Iran's currency has plummeted, inflation has soared, and ordinary Iranian citizens have borne the brunt of the economic hardship, facing shortages of essential goods and medicines. From the U.S. perspective, this pressure is a necessary tool to change Iran's behavior. But from the Iranian perspective, it's seen as economic warfare. In response to the U.S. withdrawal and the reimposition of sanctions, Iran gradually began to roll back its own commitments under the JCPOA. It started enriching uranium to higher levels, stockpiling more than it was allowed, and using more advanced centrifuges. Tehran's argument is that if the economic benefits of the deal are gone, there's no reason for it to stick to the nuclear restrictions. This has created a dangerous cycle of escalation. The tension hasn't been limited to economic and diplomatic spheres. The military friction in the Middle East has also intensified significantly. We've seen a series of alarming incidents, particularly in and around the Persian Gulf, a vital waterway for global oil shipments. There have been attacks on oil tankers, for which the U.S. and its allies have blamed Iran. Iran has denied these accusations. We also saw the downing of a sophisticated U.S. drone by Iranian forces, who claimed it had violated their airspace. The U.S. disputed this claim. Each of these incidents brought the two countries dangerously close to direct military confrontation. The rhetoric from both sides became increasingly hostile, with talk of red lines and severe consequences. The situation reached a boiling point in early 2020 with the U.S. drone strike in Baghdad that killed Qasem Soleimani, one of Iran's top and most influential military commanders. Soleimani was the head of the Quds Force, the foreign operations arm of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and he was a key architect of Iran's regional strategy. The U.S. justified the strike by labeling him a terrorist responsible for the deaths of American personnel. For Iran, this was a massive provocation, an act of war. The country was plunged into mourning, and massive crowds attended his funeral, chanting anti-American slogans. Iran retaliated a few days later by launching a series of ballistic missile attacks on Iraqi bases housing U.S. troops. While there were no American fatalities, many soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries. This direct state-on-state military exchange was a terrifying moment that many feared would spiral into a full-scale war. So, where does that leave us now? Efforts to revive the nuclear deal have been ongoing, but they've been stuck in a cycle of starts and stops. Negotiations have taken place in Vienna, but deep mistrust and a wide gap in expectations remain. The U.S. wants Iran to return to full compliance with the original deal before it lifts sanctions. Iran, on the other hand, demands that all sanctions imposed since 2018 be lifted first, and it wants guarantees that a future U.S. administration won't just pull out of the deal again. This issue of guarantees is a major sticking point. How can one U.S. administration bind the hands of the next? It's a fundamental challenge in international diplomacy. The political will on both sides seems to be wavering, and the window for a diplomatic solution may be closing. The conflict also has a much wider regional dimension. It's not just a bilateral issue between Washington and Tehran. It's playing out in proxy conflicts across the Middle East. In Yemen, Iran supports the Houthi rebels, who are fighting against a coalition led by Saudi Arabia, a key U.S. ally. In Syria, Iran has backed President Bashar al-Assad's government. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, a powerful political and militant group, is a close ally of Iran. And in Iraq, various Iran-backed militias wield significant influence. These groups are often referred to as Iran's axis of resistance. The U.S. and its regional partners, like Israel and Saudi Arabia, see this as destabilizing. They accuse Iran of using these proxies to expand its influence and threaten their security. This regional chess game adds multiple layers of complexity to the core U.S.-Iran conflict. Any move in one area can have unforeseen consequences in another. Looking ahead, the path forward is incredibly uncertain, and the stakes are enormously high. There are a few potential scenarios. The best-case scenario, though it seems increasingly distant, is a successful diplomatic breakthrough. This would likely involve a revived, or perhaps a new and modified, nuclear agreement that addresses the concerns of both sides. It would require significant compromise and a de-escalation of rhetoric. A second scenario is the continuation of the current status quo, a tense standoff marked by maximum pressure from the U.S., nuclear advancements by Iran, and periodic flare-ups of violence in the region. This is a highly unstable and dangerous state of affairs, where a single miscalculation could accidentally trigger a larger conflict. The worst-case scenario, of course, is a direct, large-scale military conflict. This would be catastrophic, not just for the U.S. and Iran, but for the entire Middle East and the global economy. A war would likely lead to immense human suffering, regional instability on a scale we haven't seen in decades, and a massive shock to global energy markets. Experts on all sides agree that this is an outcome that must be avoided at all costs. The challenge is that the current trajectory of escalation makes that outcome more, not less, likely over time. This is a complex, multifaceted issue with deep, historical roots and significant global implications. It's not a simple story of good guys versus bad guys. It's a story of competing national interests, deep-seated mistrust, and a series of actions and reactions that have led us to this precarious point. Understanding this context is key to following the news and forming your own informed opinions. What do you think is the most likely path forward? Is a diplomatic solution still possible? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more in-depth analysis of major global events. Your support really helps us continue making this content. Stay informed, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.